Question 1. What are the constitutional rights guaranteed to suspects and defendants during the arrest process in Texas? A. Right to a speedy trial. B. Right to confront witnesses against them. C. Right to an attorney. D. Right to a jury trial. Correct answer: C. Right to an attorney. Explanation. According to the Texas Constitution and the U.S. Constitution, suspects and defendants have the right to legal representation, commonly known as the right to an attorney. This right is enshrined in the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Section 10 of the Texas Constitution. It guarantees that individuals have the right to consult with an attorney and to have legal counsel present during questioning by law enforcement. The landmark case of Miranda v. Arizona established that suspects must be informed of their right to an attorney, commonly referred to as the Miranda rights. Failure to provide access to legal counsel can result in violations of these constitutional rights and render any subsequent statements or evidence obtained inadmissible in court. Question 2. During a traffic stop in Texas, what actions should a police officer take to ensure the safety of both themselves and the occupants of the vehicle? A. Immediately approach the vehicle. B. Stand in the driver's blind spot. C. Maintain a safe distance and use cover when available. D. Keep their firearm drawn and visible. Correct answer: C. Maintain a safe distance and use cover when available. Explanation. When conducting a traffic stop, it is crucial for police officers in Texas to prioritize their safety and the safety of everyone involved. Approaching the vehicle immediately or standing in the driver's blind spot can increase the risk of harm to the officer. Instead, officers should maintain a safe distance from the vehicle and utilize cover whenever possible, such as their patrol car door or other barriers. This precaution allows officers to better assess the situation and respond effectively to any potential threats while minimizing their exposure to danger. Additionally, keeping a firearm drawn and visible should only occur in situations where there is an immediate threat to the officer's safety and is not standard procedure during routine traffic stops. Question 3. In a scenario where Officer Smith responds to a domestic disturbance call involving Mr. Rodriguez, who is reported to be intoxicated and belligerent, what actions should Officer Smith take to de-escalate the situation? A. Immediately handcuff Mr. Rodriguez to prevent any aggressive behavior. B. Speak loudly and assertively to assert authority. C. Maintain a calm demeanor and establish rapport with Mr. Rodriguez. D. Threaten Mr. Rodriguez with arrest if he does not comply. Correct answer: C. Maintain a calm demeanor and establish rapport with Mr. Rodriguez. Explanation. When responding to a domestic disturbance call, especially involving an intoxicated and belligerent individual like Mr. Rodriguez, it's essential for Officer Smith to prioritize de-escalation techniques to defuse the situation safely. Handcuffing Mr. Rodriguez immediately or using threats of arrest can escalate tensions and potentially exacerbate the conflict. Instead, Officer Smith should approach the situation calmly, speaking in a non-confrontational tone, and attempt to establish rapport with Mr. Rodriguez. Active listening and empathy can help Officer Smith understand Mr. Rodriguez's perspective and address any underlying issues causing the disturbance. By building trust and showing respect, Officer Smith can increase the likelihood of a peaceful resolution to the situation, promoting public safety and maintaining the integrity of law enforcement interactions. Question 4. What are the primary objectives of conducting regular patrols as part of law enforcement duties in Texas? A. Issuing citations to generate revenue for the department. B. Providing a visible presence to deter criminal activity. C. Responding only to emergency calls. D. Conducting searches without warrants. Correct answer: B. Providing a visible presence to deter criminal activity. Explanation. Regular patrols serve multiple purposes in law enforcement, one of which is providing a visible deterrent to criminal activity. By maintaining a presence in neighborhoods and public spaces, officers discourage individuals from engaging in unlawful behavior. While issuing citations may be part of patrol duties, the primary objective is not revenue generation but rather ensuring public safety and order. Additionally, patrols allow officers to respond promptly to emergency calls, but they also serve the proactive function of preventing crimes before they occur. Conducting searches without warrants violates constitutional protections against unreasonable searches and seizures and is not a lawful patrol procedure. Question 5. What is the significance of preserving the integrity of a crime scene during the investigative process in Texas? A. It allows officers to manipulate evidence to fit their narrative. B. It ensures the safety of bystanders in the vicinity. C. It helps prevent contamination or destruction of evidence. D. It expedites the investigation process. Correct answer. C. It helps prevent contamination or destruction of evidence. Explanation. Preserving the integrity of a crime scene is critical in the investigative process to maintain the reliability and admissibility of evidence in court. Allowing officers to manipulate evidence undermines the credibility of the investigation and violates ethical standards. While ensuring bystander safety is important, the primary focus of crime scene preservation is to prevent contamination or destruction of evidence that could compromise the investigation. By securing the scene and limiting access to authorized personnel, law enforcement can collect and document evidence systematically, increasing the likelihood of identifying perpetrators and securing convictions. Question 6. What ethical principles guide the conduct of police officers in Texas when interacting with the public? A. Prioritizing personal gain over public service. B. Exercising discretion impartially and without bias. C. Engaging in activities that undermine community trust. D. Using excessive force to assert authority. Correct answer. B. Exercising discretion impartially and without bias. Explanation. Police officers in Texas are expected to adhere to a code of ethics that emphasizes integrity, accountability, and professionalism in their interactions with the public. This includes exercising discretion impartially and without bias, ensuring fair and equitable treatment for all individuals regardless of their background or circumstances. Prioritizing personal gain over public service contradicts the core principles of law enforcement, which center on serving and protecting the community. Engaging in activities that undermine community trust, such as corruption or misconduct, erodes the legitimacy of law enforcement agencies. Similarly, using excessive force violates constitutional rights and can lead to civil rights violations and legal repercussions. Question 7. Why is effective communication with diverse populations essential for police officers in Texas? A. To intimidate individuals into compliance with law enforcement directives. B. To build trust and rapport with community members. C. To assert authority and control over interactions. D. To limit interactions with certain demographic groups. Correct answer. B. To build trust and rapport with community members. Explanation. Effective communication with diverse populations is crucial for police officers in Texas to build trust, foster positive relationships, and address community concerns proactively. Intimidating individuals into compliance undermines the legitimacy of law enforcement and erodes public trust. Building trust and rapport requires officers to engage respectfully and empathetically with community members, regardless of their background or demographics. Asserting authority and control through communication can escalate tensions and lead to confrontational interactions. Limiting interactions with certain demographic groups perpetuates bias and discrimination and is counterproductive to community policing efforts aimed at promoting inclusivity and collaboration. Question 8. What are some strategies that law enforcement officers in Texas can employ to manage job-related stress effectively? A. Ignoring signs of stress and pushing through difficult situations. B. Engaging in substance abuse to cope with stressors. C. Seeking social support from peers and mentors. D. Avoiding physical activity and exercise. Correct answer. C. Seeking social support from peers and mentors. Explanation. Law enforcement officers in Texas face high levels of stress and exposure to traumatic events as part of their duties, making effective stress management essential for maintaining their well-being and performance on the job. Ignoring signs of stress and engaging in substance abuse are maladaptive coping mechanisms that can exacerbate mental health issues and impair job performance. Seeking social support from peers and mentors provides officers with an outlet to express concerns, share experiences, and receive guidance from individuals who understand the unique challenges of law enforcement. Additionally, engaging in regular physical activity and exercise is a proven method for reducing stress levels and promoting overall well-being among law enforcement personnel. Question 9. How do updates to Texas laws relevant to law enforcement impact police procedures and protocols? A. They have no effect on police procedures and protocols. B. They require officers to disregard constitutional rights. C. They may necessitate changes in police practices and training. D. They only affect certain law enforcement agencies. Correct answer. C. They may necessitate changes in police practices and training. Explanation. Updates to Texas laws relevant to law enforcement, including legislation and case law, can have significant implications for police procedures and protocols. These changes may require law enforcement agencies to adapt their practices and training to ensure compliance with new legal standards and requirements. Ignoring updates to laws can lead to legal liability and civil rights violations, undermining public trust and confidence in law enforcement. Therefore, it is essential for police agencies to stay informed about legislative developments and court decisions and to implement necessary changes to policies and procedures accordingly. Question 10. Why are physical fitness standards important for law enforcement officers in Texas? A. They have no impact on job performance. B. They ensure that officers can engage in high-speed pursuits. C. They reduce the risk of injuries and promote overall health. D. They are discriminatory and exclusionary. Correct answer. C. They reduce the risk of injuries and promote overall health. Explanation. Physical fitness standards play a crucial role in ensuring the safety, effectiveness, and well-being of law enforcement officers in Texas. Engaging in regular physical exercise and maintaining adequate fitness levels reduce the risk of injuries, enhance resilience to job-related stressors, and promote overall health and longevity. In addition to improving job performance and operational capabilities, physical fitness standards contribute to the overall professionalism and credibility of law enforcement agencies. While physical fitness requirements may vary based on specific job duties and operational needs, they are designed to establish baseline expectations for officers' physical preparedness and readiness to fulfill their duties effectively and safely. Question 11. What elements are necessary to establish the offense of burglary under the Texas Penal Code? A. Unlawful entry into a building with the intent to commit theft or a felony. B. Breaking and entering into any structure with the intent to cause harm. C. Trespassing on private property without permission. D. Possessing stolen property without the owner's consent. Correct answer. A. Unlawful entry into a building with the intent to commit theft or a felony. Explanation. Burglary in Texas is defined as the unlawful entry into a building, habitation, or vehicle with the intent to commit theft, assault, or any felony. It's important to note that burglary doesn't necessarily require breaking and entering. Unlawful entry alone constitutes the offense. The intent to commit a crime upon entry distinguishes burglary from trespassing, which involves unauthorized presence but lacks the specific criminal intent. Possessing stolen property without the owner's consent is a separate offense under theft-related statutes and is not inherently part of burglary. Question 12. How does community policing contribute to crime prevention and public safety in Texas? A. By increasing police presence only during emergencies. B. By fostering collaborative relationships between law enforcement and the community. C. By enforcing strict punitive measures without community input. D. By implementing surveillance programs to monitor citizens. Correct answer. B. By fostering collaborative relationships between law enforcement and the community. Explanation. Community policing emphasizes proactive partnerships between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve to address crime and disorder effectively. By fostering trust, communication, and cooperation, community policing strategies empower residents to actively participate in crime prevention efforts and problem-solving initiatives. This approach not only enhances public safety but also strengthens community resilience and social cohesion. Unlike traditional reactive policing models focused solely on law enforcement responses, community policing recognizes the importance of community engagement, problem-solving, and shared responsibility in creating safer neighborhoods and promoting positive police-community relations. Question 13. How do technological advancements impact law enforcement practices and procedures in Texas? A. By eliminating the need for human intervention in policing activities. B. By enhancing surveillance capabilities and data collection methods. C. By reducing public access to law enforcement services. D. By increasing reliance on outdated investigative techniques. Correct answer. B. By enhancing surveillance capabilities and data collection methods. Explanation. Technological advancements, such as surveillance cameras, data analytics, and digital communication tools, have transformed law enforcement practices and procedures in Texas and beyond. These technologies provide law enforcement agencies with enhanced capabilities for crime prevention, investigation, and response. Surveillance systems can deter criminal activity and facilitate the identification and apprehension of suspects. Data analytics enable agencies to analyze crime trends and allocate resources more effectively. Digital communication tools improve coordination and information sharing among law enforcement personnel and with the public. While technology enhances policing capabilities, it is essential to balance innovation with privacy protections and ethical considerations to maintain public trust and safeguard civil liberties. Question 14. Under what circumstances are Texas police officers authorized to use deadly force? A. To apprehend any fleeing suspect, regardless of the severity of the offense. B. To protect themselves or others from imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. C. To punish individuals for non-compliance with verbal commands. D. To prevent property damage during civil unrest. Correct answer. B. To protect themselves or others from imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. Explanation. Texas law authorizes police officers to use deadly force only when necessary to protect themselves or others from an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. This standard is consistent with the principles of self-defense and defense of others, as outlined in the Texas Penal Code and relevant case law. Deadly force should never be used as a punitive measure or to apprehend fleeing suspects unless the officer reasonably believes that the suspect poses a significant threat of harm to themselves or others. Police officers are trained to assess the level of threat posed by a situation and to use the least amount of force necessary to achieve their lawful objectives while minimizing the risk of harm to all parties involved. Question 15. Why is resilience training important for law enforcement officers in Texas? A. To encourage officers to ignore the emotional toll of their work. B. To reinforce negative coping mechanisms such as substance abuse. C. To build psychological strength and adaptive coping skills. D. To isolate officers from their peers and support networks. Correct answer. C. To build psychological strength and adaptive coping skills. Explanation. Resilience training equips law enforcement officers with the psychological tools and coping strategies necessary to navigate the challenges and stressors inherent in their profession. Rather than encouraging officers to ignore or suppress their emotions, resilience training promotes healthy ways of processing and managing stress, trauma, and adversity. This includes developing effective communication skills, cultivating social support networks, practicing mindfulness and self-care techniques, and seeking professional help when needed. By building psychological resilience, officers can better cope with the demands of their job, maintain peak performance, and sustain their well-being over the course of their careers. Question 16. What role does forensic science play in criminal investigations in Texas? A. It is the sole determinant of guilt or innocence in criminal cases. B. It provides conclusive evidence without the need for further investigation. C. It complements other investigative methods by analyzing physical evidence. D. It is irrelevant and rarely utilized in modern policing. Correct answer. C. It complements other investigative methods by analyzing physical evidence. Explanation. Forensic science plays a crucial role in criminal investigations in Texas by providing scientific analysis and interpretation of physical evidence collected from crime scenes. This evidence may include DNA samples, fingerprints, ballistics, trace evidence, and toxicology reports, among others. While forensic evidence can be highly probative, it is rarely the sole determinant of guilt or innocence in criminal cases. Instead, forensic analysis complements other investigative methods, such as witness interviews, surveillance footage review, and circumstantial evidence, to build a comprehensive case against suspects. Proper collection, preservation, and analysis of forensic evidence are essential to ensure its admissibility and reliability in court proceedings and to facilitate the pursuit of justice. Question 17. How does maintaining integrity and accountability contribute to public trust in law enforcement in Texas? A. By disregarding legal and ethical standards to achieve desired outcomes. B. By fostering transparency and accountability in police conduct. C. By prioritizing personal interests over the needs of the community. D. By imposing punitive measures on community members. Correct answer. B. By fostering transparency and accountability in police conduct. Explanation. Maintaining integrity and accountability is essential for preserving public trust and confidence in law enforcement agencies in Texas. When police officers adhere to ethical standards and demonstrate accountability for their actions, they enhance transparency and credibility in their interactions with the community. Conversely, disregarding legal and ethical standards undermines public trust and can lead to allegations of misconduct, civil rights violations, and erosion of community-police relations. Prioritizing personal interests over the needs of the community and imposing punitive measures on community members further erodes trust and reinforces negative perceptions of law enforcement. By upholding integrity and accountability, police officers demonstrate their commitment to serving and protecting the public with fairness, impartiality, and professionalism. Question 18. How does the Texas Police Entry Assessment Exam contribute to the selection and training of law enforcement candidates? A. By excluding candidates based on arbitrary criteria. B. By assessing candidates' knowledge of fundamental concepts in law enforcement. C. By favoring candidates from specific demographic backgrounds. D. By promoting nepotism and favoritism in the hiring process. Correct answer. B. By assessing candidates' knowledge of fundamental concepts in law enforcement. Explanation. The Texas Police Entry Assessment Exam serves as a standardized tool for evaluating candidates' knowledge, skills, and aptitude for a career in law enforcement. By testing fundamental concepts in areas such as criminal law, patrol procedures, investigative techniques, and ethics, the exam helps identify candidates who possess the necessary competencies to succeed in the field. While the exam aims to ensure that candidates meet established standards for entry into law enforcement agencies, it should not be used to exclude candidates based on arbitrary criteria or to promote nepotism and favoritism. Instead, the exam should be administered fairly and impartially to all applicants, regardless of their demographic background, to select the most qualified individuals for the profession. Question 19. What are the key responsibilities of police officers during vehicle operations and defensive driving in Texas? A. Engaging in reckless driving to apprehend suspects. B. Following traffic laws and safety regulations at all times. C. Using excessive force to stop vehicles. D. Disregarding pedestrian rights. Correct answer. B. Following traffic laws and safety regulations at all times. Explanation. During vehicle operations and defensive driving, police officers in Texas are responsible for adhering to traffic laws and safety regulations to ensure the safety of themselves and others on the road. This includes obeying speed limits, signaling lane changes, yielding to pedestrians, and using emergency lights and sirens appropriately when responding to calls. Engaging in reckless driving, using excessive force to stop vehicles, or disregarding pedestrian rights not only endangers public safety but also violates legal and ethical standards governing law enforcement conduct. Defensive driving techniques, such as maintaining a safe following distance, scanning for potential hazards, and anticipating other drivers' actions, are essential skills for police officers to mitigate the risks associated with high-speed pursuits and emergency responses while maintaining control and professionalism behind the wheel. Question 20. What legal standards govern the use of non-lethal force by police officers in Texas? A. Officers are authorized to use non-lethal force at their discretion. B. Non-lethal force can only be used in response to verbal insults. C. Non-lethal force must be reasonable and necessary to achieve a lawful objective. D. Non-lethal force is prohibited under all circumstances. Correct answer. C. Non-lethal force must be reasonable and necessary to achieve a lawful objective. Explanation. The use of force by police officers in Texas, whether lethal or non-lethal, is governed by legal standards derived from federal and state laws, court decisions, and agency policies. Non-lethal force, such as pepper spray, batons, and tasers, must meet the same constitutional principles of reasonableness and necessity as lethal force. Officers are authorized to use non-lethal force only when it is objectively reasonable and necessary to accomplish a lawful objective, such as effecting an arrest or defending themselves or others from imminent harm. The level of force used must be proportionate to the threat encountered and must not exceed what is reasonably required under the circumstances. Failure to adhere to these standards can result in legal liability and civil rights violations, highlighting the importance of proper training and supervision in the use of force by law enforcement officers. Question 21. In a scenario where Officer Garcia encounters a distraught individual threatening self-harm, what actions should Officer Garcia take to ensure the safety and well-being of the individual? A. Disregard the individual's emotional state and impose punitive measures. B. Approach the individual aggressively to assert control. C. Communicate calmly and empathetically while ensuring scene safety. D. Use physical force to restrain the individual. Correct answer. C. Communicate calmly and empathetically while ensuring scene safety. Explanation. When encountering an individual in crisis threatening self-harm, Officer Garcia should prioritize de-escalation and crisis intervention techniques to ensure the safety and well-being of the individual and others present. Approaching the situation calmly and empathetically can help establish rapport and trust with the individual, potentially diffusing the crisis and facilitating a positive outcome. Officer Garcia should assess the scene for potential safety hazards and take appropriate precautions to protect themselves and the individual from harm. Using physical force should only be considered as a last resort if the individual poses an immediate threat to themselves or others and all other de-escalation efforts have been exhausted. It is essential for law enforcement officers to receive specialized training in crisis intervention and mental health first aid to effectively respond to situations involving individuals in emotional distress. Question 22. What are the primary objectives of the Texas Penal Code? A. To promote criminal behavior. B. To establish legal standards for law enforcement and criminal justice. C. To infringe upon individual rights. D. To discriminate against certain demographic groups. Correct answer. B. To establish legal standards for law enforcement and criminal justice. Explanation. The Texas Penal Code serves as the primary statutory framework for defining criminal offenses, establishing legal standards for law enforcement practices and procedures, and delineating penalties for criminal conduct. Rather than promoting criminal behavior, the Penal Code aims to deter unlawful conduct by specifying prohibited behaviors and the corresponding legal consequences. It provides guidance to law enforcement officers, prosecutors, judges, and other criminal justice stakeholders in interpreting and applying the law consistently and fairly. Additionally, the Penal Code incorporates constitutional principles and safeguards to protect individual rights and ensure due process in criminal proceedings. While the Penal Code sets forth legal standards, its enforcement and interpretation require adherence to constitutional principles, procedural rules, and ethical considerations to uphold the rule of law and safeguard civil liberties. Question 23. Why is recognizing signs of stress and seeking support important for law enforcement officers in Texas? A. Because acknowledging stress is a sign of weakness. B. Because ignoring stress can lead to adverse physical and mental health outcomes. C. Because seeking support is prohibited by department policies. D. Because stress has no impact on job performance. Correct answer. B. Because ignoring stress can lead to adverse physical and mental health outcomes. Explanation. Recognizing signs of stress and seeking support are essential for promoting the well-being and resilience of law enforcement officers in Texas. Law enforcement is inherently stressful and can expose officers to traumatic events, chronic stressors, and operational challenges that may impact their physical and mental health over time. Ignoring or denying the effects of stress can lead to adverse outcomes, including burnout, compassion fatigue, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, substance abuse, and suicide. By acknowledging stress and seeking support through peer counseling, employee assistance programs, mental health services, and other resources, officers can proactively address their needs and develop coping strategies to mitigate the negative impacts of stress. Additionally, creating a culture that destigmatizes help-seeking behavior and prioritizes officer well-being fosters resilience, camaraderie, and organizational effectiveness within law enforcement agencies. Question 24. What are the key principles of conducting effective interviews with witnesses and suspects in Texas? A. Using leading questions to elicit desired responses. B. Coercing individuals into providing incriminating statements. C. Establishing rapport, asking open-ended questions, and actively listening. D. Ignoring witness testimony in favor of physical evidence. Correct answer. C. Establishing rapport, asking open-ended questions, and actively listening. Explanation. Effective interviewing techniques are essential for obtaining accurate and reliable information from witnesses and suspects in Texas criminal investigations. Establishing rapport with interviewees helps build trust and cooperation, increasing the likelihood of obtaining relevant information. Asking open-ended questions allows for detailed responses and encourages interviewees to provide their perspective on the events in question. Actively listening to verbal and nonverbal cues enables investigators to gather additional information, clarify details, and assess credibility. Using leading questions or coercive tactics can compromise the integrity of the interview process and may result in unreliable or inadmissible evidence. While physical evidence can corroborate witness testimony, it is essential to consider all available evidence and conduct thorough investigations to ensure the fair and impartial administration of justice. Question 25. What role does discretion play in the enforcement of traffic laws by police officers in Texas? A. Discretion allows officers to ignore traffic violations. B. Discretion enables officers to enforce laws impartially and fairly. C. Discretion requires officers to issue citations for every infraction. D. Discretion encourages discrimination and bias. Correct answer. B. Discretion enables officers to enforce laws impartially and fairly. Explanation. Discretion is a fundamental aspect of law enforcement that allows police officers in Texas to make informed decisions based on the specific circumstances of each situation. In the context of traffic law enforcement, discretion enables officers to assess factors such as the severity of the violation, traffic conditions, driver behavior, and public safety concerns when determining the appropriate course of action. While officers have the authority to enforce traffic laws through warnings, citations, or arrests, discretion allows them to exercise judgment and prioritize interventions that promote compliance, deterrence, and public safety. However, discretion must be used judiciously and consistently to avoid arbitrary or discriminatory enforcement practices that undermine trust in law enforcement and perpetuate inequities in the criminal justice system. Training, supervision, and accountability mechanisms help guide officers' discretionary decisions and ensure they align with legal standards and departmental policies. Question 26. How does the chain of custody protocol contribute to the admissibility of evidence in Texas criminal proceedings? A. It ensures that evidence is tampered with and contaminated. B. It establishes a chronological record of evidence handling and storage. C. It allows investigators to alter evidence to fit their narrative. D. It speeds up the investigation process. Correct answer. B. It establishes a chronological record of evidence handling and storage. Explanation. The chain of custody protocol is a procedural safeguard designed to preserve the integrity and reliability of evidence throughout the investigative process in Texas criminal proceedings. By establishing a documented chain of custody, which includes the chronological record of evidence collection, handling, storage, and transfer from one custodian to another, the protocol ensures that evidence remains secure and uncontaminated. This documentation is critical for establishing the authenticity, reliability, and admissibility of evidence in court, as it provides a verifiable record of who had custody of the evidence at each stage of the investigation. Deviations from the chain of custody or lapses in documentation can raise questions about the integrity of the evidence and may result in challenges to its admissibility during legal proceedings. Therefore, adherence to chain of custody protocols is essential for maintaining the reliability and credibility of evidence in Texas criminal cases. Question 27. How does the implementation of community policing strategies contribute to crime reduction and public safety in Texas? A. By increasing police militarization and surveillance. B. By fostering trust, collaboration, and problem-solving partnerships with communities. C. By excluding certain demographic groups from accessing law enforcement services. D. By prioritizing punitive measures over community engagement. Correct answer. B. By fostering trust, collaboration, and problem-solving partnerships with communities. Explanation. Community policing emphasizes proactive partnerships between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve to address crime and disorder effectively. By fostering trust, collaboration, and problem-solving partnerships with communities, community policing strategies empower residents to actively participate in crime prevention efforts and address underlying social issues contributing to crime. Rather than relying solely on reactive law enforcement responses, community policing encourages officers to engage with residents, identify local concerns, and develop tailored solutions that reflect community priorities and values. By building positive relationships and enhancing communication and cooperation between police and communities, community policing contributes to crime reduction, enhances public safety, and promotes mutual respect and understanding. Question 28. How do recent legislative changes in Texas impact police procedures and practices regarding the use of body-worn cameras? A. They require officers to deactivate body-worn cameras during all interactions with the public. B. They mandate the indiscriminate release of all body-worn camera footage to the public. C. They establish guidelines for the use, activation, retention, and release of body-worn camera footage. D. They prohibit the use of body-worn cameras by law enforcement agencies. Correct answer. C. They establish guidelines for the use, activation, retention, and release of body-worn camera footage. Explanation. Recent legislative changes in Texas regarding the use of body-worn cameras by law enforcement agencies have focused on establishing guidelines to govern their deployment, activation, retention, and release of footage. Rather than mandating deactivation of body-worn cameras or indiscriminate release of footage, these changes seek to balance transparency, accountability, and privacy considerations in the use of this technology. Guidelines may address issues such as when officers are required to activate cameras, under what circumstances footage may be retained or released, and how privacy concerns for individuals captured on camera are addressed. By providing clear standards and procedures for the use of body-worn cameras, legislative changes aim to enhance public trust and confidence in law enforcement, promote accountability for officer conduct, and protect the rights and interests of all parties involved. Question 29. How does adherence to a code of ethics contribute to professionalism and integrity in law enforcement in Texas? A. By encouraging unethical behavior and misconduct. B. By establishing a framework for ethical decision-making and accountability. C. By promoting discriminatory practices and bias. D. By prioritizing personal interests over public service. Correct answer. B. By establishing a framework for ethical decision-making and accountability. Explanation. Adherence to a code of ethics is fundamental to promoting professionalism, integrity, and public trust in law enforcement agencies in Texas. A code of ethics serves as a guiding framework that outlines the principles, values, and standards of conduct expected of police officers in their interactions with the public, colleagues, and stakeholders. By establishing clear expectations for ethical behavior, the Code of Ethics helps officers navigate complex moral dilemmas, make principled decisions, and uphold the highest standards of integrity and accountability. It reinforces the importance of serving the public interest, respecting individual rights and dignity, and maintaining impartiality and fairness in law enforcement practices. Violations of ethical standards can erode public trust, undermine confidence in law enforcement, and have far-reaching consequences for individuals, communities, and the criminal justice system. Question 30. How does the legalization of recreational marijuana in neighboring states impact law enforcement practices and policies in Texas? A. It has no effect on Texas law enforcement, as marijuana remains illegal statewide. B. It necessitates stricter enforcement measures to prevent the influx of marijuana across state borders. C. It prompts a review of marijuana-related laws and policies to address potential impacts on public safety and law enforcement resources. D. It leads to the automatic dismissal of all marijuana-related charges in Texas. Correct answer. C. It prompts a review of marijuana-related laws and policies to address potential impacts on public safety and law enforcement resources. Explanation. The legalization of recreational marijuana in neighboring states can have significant implications for law enforcement practices and policies in Texas, even though marijuana remains illegal statewide. In response to changing dynamics and potential shifts in public attitudes towards marijuana use, law enforcement agencies may undertake a review of existing laws, policies, and enforcement strategies related to marijuana possession, distribution, and cultivation. This review may involve assessing the impact of neighboring states' legalization on patterns of marijuana trafficking, consumption rates, law enforcement resources allocation, and public safety concerns. Additionally, legalization in neighboring states may influence public discourse and political debates surrounding marijuana policy reform in Texas, potentially leading to legislative proposals, regulatory changes, or law enforcement directives aimed at addressing emerging challenges and opportunities.